Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to The Garage. Gerald here with you. Now, before I get into my new Oscars-related video, and I'll explain that to you a little bit here, I want to shout out my friends in California on the West Coast dealing with the tragedy of the wildfires out there. And I just want to take an opportunity at the top of this video to let you know that you can support those folks because the rebuilding process is going to be extremely daunting. The organizations that I wanted to shout out that I've donated to myself, and I would recommend you looking up as well, are the California Wildlife Relief Fund and the California Community Foundation. These are ones that are specifically going to help rebuild the homes and businesses there while also helping the wildlife and the natural habitat that was there in Southern California. And you can find the links for those donation spots below. And we are thinking about all of our friends out on the West Coast that make all this movie love possible. All right, folks, thanks for tuning in. As I said, we're doing another Oscars video today as we are getting so close to the nominees being announced. Now, because of the aforementioned wildfires out in California, the nominations will be held on the 19th versus what was originally planned as the 17th. There has been a 2-day extension, essentially, on voting. So since the announcements are going to be on the 19th, the voting is now going through the 14th, which will be this upcoming Tuesday. I believe at 5 p.m. Pacific time is when voting is cut off. So essentially, at the time of recording, there's about 3 full days left of voting. And this video, while I hope you enjoy it as you're watching it, is really, I'm hoping that it'll reach some Academy voters because this is my FYC video. FYC is for your consideration for those that do not know. And movie studios, producers send those out every year. I get a ton of them in my own email inbox. And they hope to raise awareness about some of their actors or movies and some of their productions that maybe they want to lift up during award season to get notoriety by the Academy and others. But what I thought this year is I would do a video to highlight some performers, some movies, and some below-the-line categories as well that I think have a strong likelihood of missing as a nominee in their respective categories. The reason I bring that up is because if I'm predicting the movie or performance or song or whatever it may be to be nominated, and I'm predicting it to be in the final 5 for its respective category, then it's not going to be in this video. This video are stout competitors for their category that I feel like are going to miss or that I have outside of my predictions right now. If you want to see what I'm predicting, I'm going to have a full-blown video a couple days before the nominations come out with all of my predictions leading into the nominations announcement. But also you can find them anytime, updated frequently on my website. That link will be below as well. And I've also done several videos with Oscar predictions that I'll have tags up here for you throughout this video if you want to check any of my previous predictions. But I will tell you, they've changed quite a bit because as I'm sitting here, we've had the SAG nominees come out, which was a bit of a curveball from some of the things that I personally was expecting. So as I titled the video and as the thumbnail says, if any Academy voters, I'm not hopeful, but hopefully we'll see this video and pushed out to them in one way or another. It says, "Dear Academy members, hear me out." I want to start with a couple below the line categories and nominations that I think are unfortunately on the path to miss. But I want the Academy to think about these and think about how cool these nominations would be. Now, when you're talking about original score, which is going to be my first FYC shout out, with the Challengers score from Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross getting some attention at the Golden Globes, one would hope that would translate to an Oscar nomination. However, given the history of the Academy and the types of scores and songs that they tend to nominate, a raveful, energetic, in-your-face, almost drug-fueled ecstasy score that we get from Reznor, Ross, and Challengers doesn't really speak to the Academy's sensibilities. But I would like the Academy to recognize a score like that and to think about this new wave of Hollywood. We've seen it from the Academy in very recent years with wins like Everything Everywhere All at Once, Parasite going back even a little bit further, that the tides are starting to change a little bit. Other generations are starting to come up in the voting ranks with the Academy, newer members, etc. So I think a score like Challengers could creep in here and could be important, not only because it's worthy, but to bring in a youthful, more younger, energetic audience that's not just people like me, which, by the way, I'm not younger, But those that are passionate about cinema, cinephiles, yes, they're going to be tuning in no matter what. They're going to be doing predictions. They're going to be filling out office pools. All that stuff's going to happen. But what about the others? What about the people that love Zendaya? What about the people that love that really vibrant score from Reznor Ross and how it spoke to the energy in that film? In keeping with the theme of music, which of course I can't play this actual song on this video because it will most likely get copyrighted. How about the song Harper and Will Go West, the original song for the documentary Will and Harper by Kristen Wiig, a comedic actress that gained notoriety initially in the late 90s, early 2000s on SNL, Saturday Night Live, but has gone on to do some great things, not just in the realm of comedy, but maybe most well known for movies like Bridesmaids. So in the documentary, Will and Harper, Will Ferrell and his friend Harper Steele, are mutual friends with Kristen, and they reach out to her via phone, and it's a running gag throughout the whole movie that the two of them want her to write a theme song for their documentary. While the credits are rolling, kind of like a hidden scene almost, that Kristen did write a song called Harper and Will Go West, which has been in the conversation for original song this year. But again, it's something the Academy would not typically go for because it's somewhat comedic, but I would urge you to listen to the lyrics, especially if you've seen the movie. It is also a very touching, emotional, and poignant song, but it's a song that became a character in that film because of how it was focused on and how they were constantly kind of calling back to it throughout the movie. And then to have this experience, which is a beautiful trans story, and a real life story, by the way, not Amelia Perez, to have this real story, this would be a way to recognize that also. And that aspect and how important it is for that marginalized community. It's hilarious, it's beautiful, it's perfect, and it matches that movie to a T. All right, let's do one last kind of below the line category for production design. I'm going to do an FYC for Alien Romulus, the horror science fiction thriller from Fede Alvarez. As a horror guy, you can understand I'm biased. But when it comes to an Academy Award nomination for Alien Romulus, this is the category that we should really be stepping up for. There's others that it's in the mix for, like sound, effects. But when it comes to production design, what Fede Alvarez and his team did in this movie is they literally reconstructed sets and parts of the ship, in this case Romulus, to mirror the same technology and the same aesthetics that were initially introduced by Ridley Scott and James Cameron in the 70s and early 80s with Alien and Aliens. The severity of authenticity that Alvarez and team employ here is quite phenomenal. And when you think of what they could have done and how they could have cut corners with effects, etc., CGI, they do not do that. They build elaborate ships, elaborate sets to match what we saw in the original films for a sense of continuity, but also that sense of realness that we got from those films when we were scared shitless in the 1980s. At least speaking of me personally, Alien was the first horror movie I ever saw at the age of 8 years old when I wasn't supposed to. I was peeking through the door of my parents' bedroom. But when it comes to an Academy nomination, I feel like from a technical standpoint, the production design of this film rivals some of the ones that we've been hearing shouted out throughout the season. All right, now I have two I want to shout out for Best Director. Now, of course, I realize there's only 5 nominees, and if you put 2 in that are not expected to get in, you got to take 2 out, right? I think there are 2 to 3 names in the Best Director race this year that I don't necessarily think belong in the top 5. With that being said, you can look at my predictions and see what I'm predicting, which of course is different than what I'm saying on this video. However, possible nominees, and by possible I mean probable nominees, like Edward Berger for Conclave, Jacques Ayoudard for Amelia Perez, and even James Mangold for Complete Unknown. Do we really need to be basic and nominate those 3 dudes? How about this? How about Pael Kapadia for a little Indian foreign film called All We Imagine as Light? I just rewatched this for the second time last night, and I found myself in awe of the direction of this film. I found myself really taken aback and emotional by the intimacy and the familiarity that Kapadia was able to make the landscapes of Mumbai in this film. I've never been to India. I've never seen the lifestyle there. But she made it almost as if I knew what I was seeing and I had experienced it before. It was a very well translated movie to all nationalities, all languages. And it's a moving story that's borders on coming of age, even though the 2 main girls in the film are a little bit older. But it has those types of sensibilities to the way the story plays out. And again, from a direction standpoint, I can't express enough how the cinematography, the camera angles, and the decisions that were made with the characters' arcs in this film, which would lend heavily to the direction, were absolutely phenomenal and allowed me to connect to something that I otherwise, if it had been poorly directed, would not have been able to connect to. How cool would it be to get Kapadia in for Best Director, which would make 2 females in the top 5, because I also have Coralie Farjah in there for The Substance. And the other one that I think is a no-brainer for Best Director is Denis Villeneuve for Dune Part 2. Not only do I think it's a no-brainer, he was my #1 prediction for Best Director for like 3 months when I started doing these predictions back in early September. And then he started missing, and people started leaving him out of some of the critics' guilds. He didn't make the Golden Globe nominations, which I still can't believe. And then we come around to the Screen Actors Guild, other peers and colleagues in the industry, and he did not get that nomination either. And you had directors, like I mentioned earlier, like Mangold, etc., getting those nods. And I've said this on previous videos before, but what Villeneuve did with Dune Part 2, I equate to what Christopher Nolan did last year with a movie like Oppenheimer. This was a spectacle, a cinematic achievement at the box office, but also visually and from a technical achievement standpoint. There was nothing, in my opinion, nothing, even though there are movies I liked more, there was nothing technically that was more jaw-dropping, phenomenally directed than Dune Part 2. This is a world that not only Villeneuve had to create, but had to essentially recreate because it's been in our pop culture for so long. Obviously, David Lynch did the film in the 80s, the Frank Herbert books. People know this, right? So he had to put his own twist and his own touch on it, but still keep it authentic to that lore. And I was not a Dune guy prior to the original Dune coming out, and of course Dune Part 2. But now Villeneuve, and because of his direction and his eye for translating that material, I am hooked on the Dune films, and I can't wait until Messiah. Villeneuve not getting an Oscar nomination this year, and I've said this before as well, is the most baffling thing thus far in award season for me. I just don't understand it. How about some performances now? Some FYCs in supporting performances. I'm going to start with Danielle Deadwyler in The Piano Lesson. Directed by Malcolm Washington, this was a film based on an August play that I was a little lukewarm on. I didn't think it was a great movie. I didn't think it was a bad movie by any means. But what I do think is that Danielle Deadwyler continues, time and again, regardless of the project, to turn in performances that make the goosebumps stand up on the back of your neck. And she does it again in The Piano Lesson. A film that I was kind of like middling on, but when she was on screen, I was captivated. And that speaks to her performance in really everything she's been in. Not only that, we snubbed her and we failed her for her Till nomination in 2023. There's no way she should not have gotten nominated for that performance, as it was easily one of the best of the year from a lead acting standpoint. And now, from a supporting acting standpoint, I think not only could we honor this tremendous performance that we get in The Piano Lesson from her, and really making the film passable was her performance, but we could also kind of make up a little bit for our past sins, right? And I'm talking to you, Academy. How did we not nominate Danielle Deadwyler for Till a couple years ago? And I laid my boy to rest a couple days ago after the Screen Actors Guild nominations came out, and I'm talking about Clarence Macklin from Sing Sing. I said that we might need to plan funeral services for his nomination, because it is so far out of reach now with him missing so many high-profile nominations. Obviously, he's not getting the wins if he's not being nominated, and he continues to miss time and time again. This is another one similar to Villeneuve and director. Macklin, I had him at #1 in my supporting actor predictions for multiple weeks because I feel like that performance is so transformative and so transcending, because he is essentially playing a version of himself. He is reliving his own life and doing time in prison. And the movie itself, and of course Macklin's character, it's all centered around arts and community and performing. And the Screen Actors Guild, who do every member on that, does that for a living. And he did not get a nomination there. And I said that his Oscar nomination hopes were hinged on what happened at the SAG, which is why I think he is destined to miss the top 5 at the Academy Awards. But I would give one FYC shout out to the Academy voters that might be watching or might get wind of this. Clarence Macklin, not being a classically trained actor and being able to do what he did in Sing Sing, as reliving those personal moments and feelings and portraying it to us as a conduit through himself, is a very deep, committed performance that goes down as one of the best of this year overall for me. And I think it's a shame that he would not, at a minimum, get a nomination for that. I'm going to talk about a couple of lead performances that unfortunately I think stand a chance to miss as well. How about Sebastian Stan in The Apprentice? Yes, I know this is a film where he's portraying Donald Trump, which 2 days after the Academy announces their nominees, Trump will be inaugurated again into office for a second term. I get it. This is not a pro-Trump movie, but what I'm talking about from an FYC perspective is Stan's performance as Trump in the film, yes, but also his body of work this year. He was also phenomenal in A Different Man and actually won the Golden Globe for that performance. As Trump in The Apprentice, he created a new vision for that larger-than-life pop culture figure of Trump. He, in the first half of that movie, made that character sympathetic to the viewer, made that character see his goals and his aspirations and kind of sympathize with them. He just wanted to make his city a better place. As we get into the second half of the film is when the villainous or the antagonist Trump shows up, and we see some of those narcissistic, rude qualities start to come out in the character that can be seen on any news station you turn on right now. And it was a brilliant blend from Stan to that kind of aw shucks character to demigod that he becomes by the end of the film. And that layered performance actually made me, as a liberal, understand Trump a little bit more. And that came through in Stan's performance. Nothing else. Any other actor may not have been able to do that with such nuance. Now, I'm not a Trump supporter after seeing the movie, but I do understand the motivations, and I do understand how he got to where he got from a personality standpoint that we see in the public eye today. And I really commend Sebastian Stan for being as courageous as he was for A, taking this role, and then B, for researching it and translating it to us the way he did. A brilliant performance that, frankly, I'm very, very excited to watch again. Brazilian actress Fernanda Torres will be my next shout out for I'm Still Here. This would be in the lead actress category. I actually have her right at number 5, number 6, literally on the fence of being a possible nominee. So if she's at that 6 and she's just too far off the fence, how do we get her over to the fence and get her into the top 5, the Academy? Listen, this story and Fernanda's performance specifically packed possibly the largest emotional gut punch in cinema for me this year. This was another film that's in a foreign language that I was easily connected to because of her performance and a lot of other great things in the film as well, if I'm being honest. But she encompasses this innate ability and desire within all parents to protect their children, to be there for their kids no matter what the sacrifices that we make in life. And this was a time in the 1970s when the military dictatorship was taking over in Brazil. I also think her performance and this movie in general is important to shed a light on that historical time in history, in world history, that frankly I did not know a whole lot about before seeing the movie. And the movie does that thing where it sparks the interest and then makes you go research it, even if it's just a Wikipedia page, to find out what was recreated and portrayed in the film. I think Fernanda Torres goes to a very vulnerable place in this movie. I think it should be a no-brainer to put her in the top 5 female performances of the year, especially when there's some other questionable ones kind of floating around in the top 5 without naming names. It would be an absolute travesty to not give Fernanda Torres a nomination this year, especially after she won the Golden Globe and the narrative has kind of been reintroduced of her mother losing this award 25 years ago to Gwyneth Paltrow in Shakespeare in Love. Talk about making up for your sins. And then last but not least is a Best Picture of the Year nominee that I don't think, frankly, has any chance to win. It's probably around that 13-14, just outside the top 10, is Robert Eggers' Nosferatu. From a technical achievement standpoint, forget it. I mean, along with Dune Part 2, which I mentioned earlier, Nosferatu are the two most well-crafted films I've seen this year. Whether you're talking about cinematography, score, the DP, of course the performances and the direction, just on the effects. I mean, everything that tied into making this film is masterful. And the movie is going to probably get quite a few technical nominations. So if it's being nominated for score, if it's being nominated for production design, if we're throwing in visual effects, cinematography, why not best movie? You guys know, the other branches know, by nominating it in the 5 best in those respective categories, what are we doing? It must be one of the best pictures of the year, with The Substance getting as much love as it's gotten in 2024, which I also agree with. And I do have The Substance in my top 10 right now for nominations. If Nosferatu were in there, because you're looking at Sing Sing dying more and more, and you're looking at a movie like September 5 or A Real Pain, I like those movies. But the 10 best movies of the year, and I think we need to also increase the horror narrative, because now you would have 2 horror films in your top 10, and the world would lose its mind, and you would gain so many fans from the horror community. I'm already there. My channel is essentially dedicated to the award season and horror. It's pretty much a 50-50 split. How many people would you bring in for nominating 2 horror movies on your best picture slate? Now, of course, with that being said, if that happens, Sing Sing's not going to get in, which would be heartbreaking for me. But we should be putting a movie like Nosferatu, or even The Substance for that matter, over movies like September 5 and A Real Pain, which are probably everybody's near miss right now, and one of those could sneak in for Sing Sing. I would much rather see Nosferatu get in. That was my quick FYC Oscars wrap-up. Those are performances and films and texts that I do not think stand a chance to get into the top 5, but they absolutely should be considered for the top 5 in their respective categories. What did I miss? Please let me know down below in the comments. And don't forget, my final Oscars nominations predictions video will be out just 2 or 3 days before they announce the nominations on the 19th. Probably before the end of the week, I will have that full video for you, including all of the bottom of the line categories. And you can see those updated predictions anytime on my website, 2peasonapod.com, which will be linked down below for you also. Let me know what you thought of this video. Let's get ready for Oscar season. And don't forget to support and reach out to your friends out in California. All of those support links are below as well. Thanks for watching. I'll see you out here next time in the garage.